Hello everyone, it's Lindsay, and today I'm back with another Bible journaling process video using some products from Felicity Jane. And today I'm going to be journaling in Psalm 98 verse 1 says, "Sing a new song to the Lord, for he has performed wonders. His right hand and holy arm have won him victory." And so I wanted to kind of do a entry to wrap up the year. You'll be watching this at the very end of December. And so I wanted to write a prayer for the end of this year, the beginning of next year, just thanking God for all that He's done for my family this year, and just kind of a private prayer. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity to use these vellum pockets from Felicity Jane and create a little prayer spot that's a little more private with like a tag, and do some journaling on the tag. And thankfully in Psalms I have this big open area. Even if you're not working in the Illustrating Bible, if you're working in a regular journaling Bible with a smaller margin, there's a couple different sized pockets in here that you should be able to use even in a regular Bible. And they are vellum, so they are, you know, transparent, so you should be able to read the text through there if you wanted to as well, if that's a concern of yours. So yeah, so I pulled out those. I pulled out a few other little elements that I think I'm going to use. Some of the trim that I got from the holly kit, I want to utilize some of that. I have a cute idea for a little bow. Yeah, just some other fun things, and we'll put this page together. So let me go ahead and put you on fast forward and we'll get it all put together.
Okay, so I always like to start with the background, and for this page, we're going to keep it really simple. So I've gone ahead and slid a mat underneath my page just to protect the rest of the Bible, and I've pulled out some gold metallic watercolor. Now, a trick with these is you want to make sure that you get a good amount of water in them and really mix them up to get those like metallic pigment stirred into the paint. And then I'm taking a big fluffy paintbrush because I want very large splatters, since this is really going to be all I'm doing to the background. These pockets are vellum, and so you can see through them. So you want to be careful with what you do underneath them, because it will kind of clash with the pattern of the pocket if you're not careful. So I just added these gold splatters, dried them, and then we're going to call that good for the background. So I pulled out the larger pocket, and these are awesome. They're like a half pocket, so you can see on the back here, there's just some flaps with adhesive already on there, so you can just pull the backing off and stick it down. So easy to use, and they're made in a way that there's enough room that you can, you know, stick a good size tag in there. Now, I do go ahead and stick this down, and then later, that was a mistake. I should have done some embossing to it first, but that's okay. I'll show you what happens. So I'm just going to press that down to the page, and then I can start kind of clustering and adding my details to the pocket. So I've pulled out some die cuts from the holly kit, and at this point is where I remember that I wanted to do some embossing to the vellum pocket, and I should have done it before I stuck it down, but that's okay. We're gonna wing it. We're gonna make it work. So I like lots of different layers and dimensions. So I wanted it to look like this tree is behind this holly girl die cut, and so I'm kind of trying to figure out, do I want a row of trees, just one tree? So I figure out where I want it, and I am going to make sure that I mark it that way. I know it's going to be right in the right place once I stick everything back on top. So I do go ahead and prepare it with an anti-static powder tool. Vellum has a tendency to grab a hold of embossing powder, so you do want to use some kind of powder tool to prep it. And then I'll go ahead and stamp this tree using a clear sticky ink. You can see with this Bible, since it's coil bound, I can flip it around so just this page is down on the table, so I can make sure I get a good impression when I stamp. And I'm giving good pressure because there are those areas where that adhesive is on the pocket. I want to make sure that it stamps over the top of that. So then I'm going to go in with some gold embossing powder and then just tap off the extra onto a scrap piece of paper. And you can see I'm kind of having some difficulties already because it's already in my Bible. It is a little more difficult to emboss in your Bible as opposed to, you know, a card or a scrapbook page or something like that. I can go ahead and dump that excess back in the container. Don't waste that. And then with embossing on vellum, you want to make sure you let your heat tool get good and hot before you bring it to the vellum. Vellum has a tendency to warp, and that is what I had an issue with. Even though I'm continuously moving my heat tool, not holding it in one place, trying to move very quickly to get this embossed, it is still warping the vellum, which is then warping my Bible page. And so that wouldn't have happened if I had embossed the pocket first and then stuck it down to my page. But actually, as I'm recording this voiceover, my Bible has sat out for about 24 hours now, and it has pretty much settled and smoothed out on its own. So don't worry, once you've closed it and let it sit for a little while, it will kind of flatten things like this out. Okay, so we got it embossed. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the star detail. I'm going to use a permanent ink since I'm stamping on vellum, and vellum can be kind of slick to stamp on, so just be careful when you're stamping. And now I can go ahead and start layering those pieces back on. So I have this little label piece that I'm going to stamp the date on using the date stamp from Felicity Jane. Again, using a permanent ink, since these die cuts kind of have a slick finish to them, I do like to use a permanent ink when I stamp on there, just to make sure that I don't smear it or anything like that. And here is a little heart as well from the holly collection as well. I will admit I have a hard time deciding what pieces to save for my December daily project and what pieces to use in my Bible journaling this month, since I'm doing both projects. I'm trying not to hoard. Here I have some nesting tag dies, and so I did go ahead and pull one that would fit in this pocket and cut it from just some 110-pound white cardstock, and then also cut the little reinforcer piece from one of the holly papers. I cut another one of the same size and ran this through a 3D embossing folder, and that added this really fun snowflake detail to that tag. When you are using that embossing folder, you want to make sure that you lightly spray your cardstock down with a little bit of water before you run it through that embossing folder when they're 3D. That way you get a good impression without it cracking. So I did that all off camera because it uses my die cut machine. And this tag is where I'm going to write my prayer. So this is why I cut two different ones, one that's embossed and one that's not. That way I can adhere the one that's not on the back and have a smooth place to write, and then have that fun texture on the front. And again, I'm just trying to be mindful of the fact that that pocket is vellum, so I can see anything that comes through it. So I wanted to keep the tag very, very simple. I had tried it with some pattern papers and things, but it was just too busy with that polka dot pocket. And so I went just for plain white cardstock and embossed some texture on there. And I really like how that came out there. So in my mind, immediately when I saw this velvet ribbon, when I opened my holly kit, I really wanted to make some of these fun, simple bows that just seem like Felicity Jane bows in my mind. So I'm cutting myself a little piece of this, and a lot of this ends up being cut off camera because I really fussed with it. It's hard to get adhesive that will work with this velvet trim. So initially I kind of use my tiny attacher to staple this first part together, and all I'm doing is folding the ends so that they meet in the middle, and this is creating the loops of my bow. And then I can use my tiny attacher, and then I'm going to cut a smaller piece to wrap around the center there. And I tried multimedia matte, I tried Tombow Mono Multi, and ultimately ended up having to pull out my hot glue gun and use my hot glue. So save yourself all the trouble, just go straight to the hot glue, and that worked better for this velvety ribbon. And then just was able to make this fun little bow detail up at the top of the pocket there. There's a lot of trim, a lot of detail going on this page, but this is one of the fun parts about Bible journaling is once you get the main elements down that you want, I then just take the time to build up layers, add little details, and this whole time I'm, thinking about the scripture, thinking about what I want to write on that tag, I'm just reflecting on the last year, all that goodness. So I pulled out these red sequins from the holly kit, and I've sped this up quite a bit because I fussed. All of you out there who can just do natural, looks like it was just sprinkled on the page sequin pattern, that is not me. I struggle with it, so I mess with it like crazy. I even played with maybe making them into little ornaments on the tree, which was just way too much of this red. I'm not a huge red fan, so this was definitely out of my comfort zone. And I'll admit, this is one good thing about being on design teams, is it really pushes me out of my comfort zone as far as the layering and the details and things like that. I sometimes stop a little early in my page development and I'm not always happy with it. And part of that is just because I need to press through and just add more details and more layers and take some more time to do that to end up with a page that, you know, is the end result that I'm looking for. So I really love the embossing on this tag, but I wanted to stand out just a little bit more. And so I'm taking another clear sticky ink and I am just going to very, very lightly rub this over the top of the tag. So any of the highest areas that have been embossed are going to grab a hold of this ink. It's better to make several light passes than to go in really heavy-handed, because you're going to get this ink everywhere, and that's not where I want it. I want it just to pick up the snowflake design. And then I'm going to take some gold perfect pearls and just dust that over this, and everywhere that ink is, it's going to grab a hold of the perfect pearls. And here's where you'll see it really brings out the snowflake detail of this tag and ties in the gold that's in that embossing and the gold ink on the background. And it's just enough of a detail that you can see something's going on with the tag without, you know, really conflicting with everything that's on front of that vellum pocket. Anywhere where I feel like it needs a little more ink, I can just go in and add that and then dust that off. Now the key with perfect pearls is you do want to lightly mist it with water, and this is what activates it and then sets it so that it's permanent and won't rub off. And then I can just go ahead and dry that. And since I used 110 pound cardstock and 2 pieces of it, I didn't have to worry about warping or anything like that. So here's where I'm talking about adding more details. I pulled out this little label. This is from a past kit. And then I pulled out the stamp set from last month, and it had this little grateful label stamp, and I'm going to add that to that label piece. I just kind of felt like maybe that left-hand corner was a little bare. And again, I'm just keeping in mind some of the ladies on this team are amazing with their layering skills and their details and just their creativity. And so it's really pushing me to explore with that and play more with different pieces and to go big or go home, add tons of layers. And so that's what I did there, just added that little label. And again, that tag is going to have a prayer of thankfulness for this year, so that grateful just really works with that. Went ahead and took a marker and highlighted the verse, pulling in some more of that red. And then there's this little star stamp in the Holly stamp set. And I'll use some gold pigment ink to stamp some little stars around that verse. Again, just bringing in more details. And yes, it takes longer to do it this way. But the whole time, like I said, I'm thinking about that verse, thinking about the last year. And it's just part of the process for me. So at this point, I sit back and go, I kind of feel like that pocket is floating on the page. Even though I have all of those die cut elements, it still just kind of feels like it's floating there. So I think, what if I add some washi tape to the bottom? And so there's this scallop washi from a couple kits ago. I'll link it down below. And I'm kind of hesitant to start tearing things apart to add this, but we're just going to go for it. So I tear off those little sequins, add that down, and I'm so glad I did that. I feel like it really tied everything together, brought in some more of that black, and just gave like a home for everything to sit on. I don't know. I know that sounds crazy, but I just feel like it pulled everything together. So now I can go back in and just re-glue those sequins, and that is it for the entry today. So if you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave those down below. Check out the description box for links to everything that I mentioned. Head on over to the blog for more close-up photos of this project, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed, and until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.